If you like Star Trek and Star Wars and you like ship battles, you'll like this channel. And if you like what you see, please subscribe and make a comment. It helps. It really does. And with that being said, let's get started. Alright, so you guys have seen I did my video about the Klingon Bird of Prey and how it was one of the best ships that the Klingon Empire ever designed, how that ship alone kept the Klingon Empire afloat. Of course, that's just my opinion. You can go back and watch that video. If you don't agree with me, that's totally fine, because that's what it's all about, talking about Star Trek, having discussions, learning new things. With that being said, one of the things that I did a couple of years ago is I actually started creating a data table based on Star Trek weaponry, shields, and hull, based on what you see in the show. So I was only taking data from Next Generation, DS9, Voyager, and the movies. No cartoons, no modern Star Trek like Discovery, none of that. And so one of the things that I did is I have a colleague of mine who is a physicist, and I was working with him, and I asked him if he would mind taking a look at some information that I had gotten off from some students who had written a paper about the power output levels of Star Trek ships and then compared them into real physics, acting as if they were actually real, and how they would interact with our environment. And with that being said, I was doing a power scale. I had a variable to use, and so I was using the Enterprise D from the Next Generations, was what most of my data was correlated with that weapon on that ship and other ships, and then we just backtrack and things of that nature. With that being said, I found most of the power scales based on my formulas throughout the years doing that process. Now I will say there are some variables that we could not account for, so it's not 100% accurate by any means, but it's just a ballpark figure. So one of the things we're going to start off with is torpedoes. So when you convert them to a power scale, because these things are not being used on the scale that we use for like nuclear blast, they're at a totally different level. We found that the photon torpedoes from the Kirk generation are equivalent to one shot from a Type X phaser from Star Trek. So when you see the Klingon Bird of Prey, it has a power output of 65,000. So if you have a shields of, let's say, 325,000, you get hit with a torpedo, you're going to go down by 65,000. Now, if you're being attacked during this time period by a Klingon Bird of Prey, the Scout, the one from the movie, the first time we've seen it, its disruptors are not really that powerful, but they do shoot quickly. And so you get a blast of 3,750. So with that being said, I thought it'd be kind of cool to take some of these data points and share them with you of battles that we have seen during Star Trek, and then I can show you what the correlation from a data perspective is with these ships and these battles. And with that being said, I hope you guys enjoy. Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. So when we think about that movie, that end scene with the Klingon Bird of Prey that could cloak and could fire, I was always curious what the actual battle statistics would look like that. So here you go. I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, so from this point I just kind of want to talk about, let's look at them from a military perspective, what we're seeing here. So you can see the Excelsior. I apologize, I should have made the Excelsior's information a little bit bigger, but the Excelsior, the shields are 390, and they're the same on the Constitution class. And the reason I put that there is we don't really know what the shields are on the Excelsior, but we know that the Constitution class was upgraded with the most modern Federation technology. And so the Constitution class at this point had a shield of 390,000. So at that point, I really think that that was the top notch, because this ship was the flagship of the Federation for a long time. And, Kirk is now an admiral, so they would definitely want to give him some good upgrades. So it's feasible. And then, unfortunately, the hull damage is coming from DS9, and it could be inaccurate, but I really don't think that they upgraded those ships that much, up until the Dominion War. I know that there was something they say they did something about 30% or something along those lines, but I don't think there was really that much emphasis on completely redoing Excelsior class starships. They were more focused on building new ships. So that's what you get. So you get the Enterprise. The Constitution class has shield 390, has a hull of 325, and the defense of 750. And you look at the Bird of Prey. The Bird of Prey shields are slightly weaker, and its hull is like, almost half of what the Enterprise is, and it has a defense of 520. And you would kind of think that's kind of, obviously it's weaker. But then when you think about the size of the Bird of Prey, for its hull to be, the weight of the Bird of Prey compared to the Enterprise is way heavier and way bigger than the Bird of Prey, and the Bird of Prey is about half the strength when it comes to the hull. So the Bird of Prey has to be very, very thick hull, and a lot, or it has to be some kind of really powerful material, because it's taking a lot of a beating, or can take a huge beating for something so small. So to give you an idea, I remember the previous video, and I don't remember exactly what it is, but I know that this ship is like something like 260 tons or something like that, and the Enterprise is like 1 million. So obviously it's like 4 times, it weighs 4 times the weight, or 4 times less than the Constitution class, but yet at the same time it's almost got like half the power. So either the Constitution class isn't really that well armored, or it's vice versa, the Bird of Prey is really, really well armored. And in my opinion, I would think that the Bird of Prey is probably just really, really armored, because it just seems like something Klingons would do. And then the Excelsior, there's like an armor point perspective, and the Constitution and then the Excelsior are made from the same armor point. It's something like 2.6 or something like that. And so that makes, and the reason that it is like later on, like ships like the Galaxy class, they have like a 4.6 or something like that. It gets much lower because during this time period, these were warships. Plain and simple. These are absolute warships. So the Constitution class and the Excelsior are warships. Because the Constitution class is pretty much superior than anything the Klingons have. And then the Excelsior is just a whole nother level. There's really nothing the Klingons had that could even compete with the Excelsior. I know there's like beta ships that kind of exist out there from games and stuff, but you don't see them on screen. And so if they exist, they may or may not. It's up to you to decide. I really don't know if they do. And if they did, they probably were not made in big numbers, or they just kind of fell out of existence because they were old and the Klingons didn't build new ships after the destruction of the Praxis, I guess. Completely up to you guys what you think. So when you see these kind of statistics, one of the things that is not showing is the weapons. And I'll show some kind of weapon data towards the end here, but I just want to show you the shields, the hull, and the defense. And so sometimes you'll see some of the data points are over years, and sometimes I was using different formulas. So if you see DFF, it really doesn't mean anything. So DEF and then DEFF are really supposed to be the same thing. Or it'll say defense. That's really what it stands for. So it's an overall defense of just obviously adding the shields on the hull. So with that being said, let's move on to the next one. So this is from one of the Star Trek movies, and I can't remember what the name of the movie was, but this is the one where Geordi Visor gives him the shield frequencies, and this Klingon Bird of Prey, which is the D12, which is an old version, or actually I would say it's an old version, it's an older, outdated version of the Bird of Prey. And so these are the defenses. Okay, so this D12, it's not a command, but what I'm taking is the data from Martok. Yeah, I don't know why I can't talk. Martok, his Bird of Prey. And his Bird of Prey had a shield of 455,000, and then the Bird of Prey typical hull value was 195,000. So it would give it a defense of 650. And so I really think that the Duras sisters would have been using, a pretty modern ship. And so I'm not going to be putting them on the old Bird of Prey Burrell Scout. I'm going to get this as a D12. I think this is an upgraded version. It would probably be closer or more similar to the DS9 Bird of Prey command ship. So that's what I have here. And so you can see basically it has an upgraded, obviously upgraded shields. It's got the same hull, but it would have had a more sophisticated arsenal on it. So its torpedo would probably not be 65,000 like the old one. It probably would have been more like 173,000, which is the same it's TNG and DS9 torpedoes are actually, torpedo technology is significantly better than Kirk's era. And then when you look at the shields of the Enterprise, it's 1,755,000. So, I mean, it's just absolutely a beast compared to this little bird of prey. Its hull is 1,191,000. So the whole value of the Enterprise is just way, way stronger than this little teeny bird of prey. And it gives it overall defense of 2,946,000. So, I mean, for a ship of its size, the bird of prey is pretty effective. I mean, obviously, a ship like this, because it couldn't really take on an Enterprise in any form or manner, really, because the Enterprise could just blast it with torpedoes before, it can really do any real damage if it really wanted to, if it wasn't like surprised, like what happened with the Enterprise here. But you can see that the Enterprise, it took something like 24 shots and a torpedo or something like that. I can't remember what the exact formula was before the Enterprise became critical and then blown up. So, I mean, the Enterprise took a considerable amount of damage with its shields down from the bird of prey. So the bird of prey that you're seeing here would have had disruptors around 32,500, which is what we see during the Dominion War. So that's really what you'd be seeing on this ship. It would be 2 disruptors of 32,500 and 1 torpedo launcher. Now, the torpedo launcher on this doesn't really seem to be that sophisticated. There are some Klingon variants of the bird of prey, which were able to 4 to 5 torpedoes, but that's not a normal technology or normally seen. Most Klingon birds of prey are single-shot torpedo launchers, and this is one of those single-shot torpedo launchers. The Enterprise D has I would say, a heavy or a modified torpedo launcher. That forward-facing torpedo launcher and the rear-facing torpedo launcher on the Enterprise is capable of launching 10 torpedoes. On screen, you see it do a max of 8, but it's capable of launching 10 if it needs to. And there is a burst fire, which instantly fire 5, which we've seen it do many times before. So we'll show you the bird of prey versus its number one opponent, obviously the Jem'Hadar bug ship or fighter, or whatever you want to call it. But the Jem'Hadar fighter has a shield of 325,000, has a hull value of 195,000, so it gives a defense of 520. So the bird of prey, on the other hand, has a shield of 440 or 4,500 or 5,500, and it has a hull value of 195, which happens to be the same, which is kind of cool, and then has a defense of 650. So there's really not that much of a difference as far as the defense. I mean, obviously the bird of prey can cloak, and then when it comes to the weapons, the Jem'Hadar ship actually has better weaponry than the Klingon bird of prey. It has 3 Polaron beam weapons, which are 65,000 apiece, and then depending on the variant, though, it may or may not have 2 torpedo launchers. There are torpedo launchers that are on the Jem'Hadar ships. They don't use them very often. They're single shots, and it's more effective for the Jem'Hadar to focus using the Polaron beam weapons than it is to use torpedoes. And they are absolutely single-shot torpedo launchers. So when I kind of look at that it kind of shows you, I mean, the bird of prey is actually significantly larger than the bug ship. The bug ship is actually smaller than the bird of prey. So the bug ship is just nothing but just pure armor flying around. It's actually really strong for a ship its size. I know they get their butts kicked all throughout the show, and they don't really seem that strong. But when you go back and you look at the data and you watch the show and then you compare it from a resource perspective, the Jem'Hadar is a beast to mess with. I mean, it's something that doesn't take a lot of materials, and it can be mass produced, and it's very, very dangerous. The bird of prey is, as far as like the Alliance forces, there's no other small ship that even comes close to the defensive capabilities of the bird of prey. The bird of prey is fast, it's maneuverable, it can cloak. It's a fantastic ship. It's kind of like if I had the choice between one of these, it's really hard to decide which one I would use. it would be a hard choice, but I would choose the Dominion bug ship just because, yes, the cloaking device is just gives you like a lot of maneuverability on the battlefield, but it's countered by the Jem'Hadar. The Jem'Hadar have scanners that are capable of detecting cloaked ships, so that massive advantage then becomes not so much an advantage. Not to mention, if you're in close combat and you don't have the advantage of the cloaking device, the Jem'Hadar ship will probably kill you. But if you're able to surprise the Jem'Hadar, he's got no chance. Okay, so if you guys remember the Kvort, this is its data points. So the Kvort is from TNG. Shields are 1,451,000, has a hull of 520,000, has a full defense of 2,317,000. We've seen the ship in Season 5. One of the things I want to point out is the ship's mass is 1,890,000 metric tons, which is about half that of the Enterprise. Now, this is the part that's interesting. So its length is 678 meters. So this ship is huge. It's almost the size of the Galaxy-class starship, and it's around the same size as the Volca-class cruiser. So this ship is massive. And some of the things that I have seen say that this ship is part of a command platform. So it's considered a cruiser, and it's a command platform scaled up 4.3 times from the cruiser. So I guess it's 4.3 times bigger than the old cruiser that the Klingons were using. So it's 4 times the size of its previous cruiser. I would almost say it's actually a light cruiser, and I've seen some information say that it is. And I would say that it would probably fall in that category. But being as big as that is, in the whole value, I take it back. Actually, it does make sense, because if you think about the Enterprise's hull is like something like 1 million something. And so this is basically half of that. And the ship weight is half, but the size is comparable. So that tells you there's something about this ship. It's not, honestly, not really well armed. It's got a pretty light armor for a ship of its size. And I try to think like, what's an in-house reason for something like this? And I really think that the ship, obviously, its main defense is that really powerful shield. The ship has 2 forward-facing torpedo launchers that are single shots, but it's got those powerful disruptors. It's got 4 disruptors that can hit you with 32,500. That's a lot of damage, and a lot of consistent damage for a ship. So it can decloak, hit a big target, and then bring a lot of fire onto you. So it's a good ship, honestly. It's a really good ship for taking on medium to heavy cruisers, because you could probably have a couple of these, and then you could take on something big like the Enterprise or a Warbird. But I also think that its kind of size is, the reason why it's so big is it is also a troop transport. So it says here that it's capable of carrying, check this out, 1,500 crew or troops. That's a lot. That is a lot. I mean, to give you an idea, the Enterprise has 1,000 crew members. The Vulture class cruiser, their main strongest ship that they're running around with, is carrying 1,900. So, it's only a few hundred less. That's a lot of crew. So it's definitely a troop transport on top of a cruiser. So it's a cruiser / troop transport. Imagine this thing cloaking, attacking a target, and then dropping 1,500 troops off, and then just moving on to the next target. That's a lot of people. All right, and just to throw in an extra, I wanted to talk about the Kvort from the Mirror World. So one of the things I noticed is that the hull value from the Mirror World and the shields are less than the other K-Vort that we were dealing with from the TNG. So this K-Vort is obviously from the mirror universe. It's not the same K-Vort, which I was surprised when I did the data. I was like, huh, wait a minute. And then, but the thing is that it doesn't make sense to me, and this is just kind of I don't know how to rationalize this. It doesn't make any sense because the whole strength is just crappy. I mean, I don't know how else to say that. It's just really crappy. So I was trying to come up with a reason for this, and I really had a hard time. And then I kind of started thinking about it. I was like, you know what? Maybe in this universe, the whole like Praxis explosion thing that crippled the economics of the Klingon Empire never happened. And so as time progressed, Burrell was so successful, they were like, you know what? Let's just build a larger, really cheap version of the K-Vort, or whatever they want to call the Burrell, their new K-Vort, and this is like a very cheap light cruiser for mass production. And if that's the case, then this design would make sense, I guess. That they're not building this ship because they have to. They're building the ship just because they need numbers and they have the ability to do it. So it's just kind of like a light attack vehicle, basically, for its time period, but it's still decent. I mean, the shields are not that far off from the other version, and then the hull value is, it is off by quite a bit, but overall, it's still a decent ship. I mean, this could definitely take on, a Galor with no problem at all. And obviously 3 of them were able to take on the Enterprise and destroy it. So it's not that bad. Now, the only thing about the K-Vort and the Burrell is we talk about all this stuff. I really think that the Burrell, I think it's a cheap, easily produced ship, but I don't really know that for sure. We know that the Klingon Empire had a lot of them, but there's a lot of technology in it. It might be expensive to produce, but I highly doubt it. It just seems like that they produced so many of them, they just like mainstreamed the production of the Burrells, and it was just done. And I think maybe that same process was done with the K-Vort during this mirror universe, and so that's why this K-Vort is like the downgraded version of the K-Vort, because there's so many different birds of prey. This could just be another variant of the one that we see in the real universe, the TNG, because there's there's the D12 and all these other ones, they're out there and stuff. And so that's just kind of my thought about it, is that this is like a budget version of the K-Vort, maybe. So this is part 1 of part 2 of Show Me the Power of the Bird of Prey. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please make a comment, please like, and please subscribe.